Hello everyone, it's Becky here. So today I'm going to review 3 of the sketchbooks that I've used over the years. So over the 9 years since I started my first art journals, I have filled over 45 sketchbooks. And I have tried so many brands. For some brands that I really like, I just bought it many more times. So here are the 3 that I used. So when selecting sketchbooks, I really recommend you to get sketchbooks with a hard back or hard covers, front and back covers, because especially for me when I'm sketching outdoors, sometimes I have to hold my sketchbook like this. So if the sketchbook has a really hard, strong front and back cover, it's gonna stay flat. However, you hold it, and so it's really convenient compared to those sketchbooks with soft cover. Okay, it's really great for traveling around with solid cover sketchbooks. So I think pretty much all of the sketchbooks that I have are all of the art journals I have filled over the years are hard covered sketchbooks, because before the pandemic, I'm always like outdoors doing urban sketching, out and about. Okay, so the first sketchbook or art journal that I'm gonna review is a handbook, just a regular drawing sketchbook. So this is one of my early art journals from, let's see, 2013. Okay, so the first sketchbook or art journal that I'm gonna review is a handbook, just a regular drawing sketchbook. So this is one of my early art journals from 2013. The paper is actually very thin and it's intended for dry media only, like pen, pencils. So these are some of the pages. So these are my early attempts at art journals. The paper is very thin. It's kind of like just a regular cartridge paper, even thinner than some cartridge papers. The paper weight, I think it's about 70 pounds. I think it really depends. For me, when I use watercolors, I don't do too many layers, so the pages stays quite flat. The paper doesn't bend up too much, and it's actually quite absorbent, because the watercolors I used back then was kind of like a cheap brand, so the colors don't look very vibrant on here. But overall, the paper is very smooth. It has a tiny bit of tooth, so it's really smooth for pen drawings, and I think it's quite suitable for pencils and color pencil drawings as well. For watercolor techniques, let me see. I think it can do like very basic blending of watercolors pretty well. Like here when painting the evening sky, so I see the colors are blending in an okay way. And here I've tried to sketch with pen and then color with pencil crayons or color pencils. And as you can see, it works pretty well. This paper is great for dry media. For the flower pot over here, I'm trying to do some blending. So for this paper, when I was trying to do multiple layers of watercolors, the blending actually didn't work well perfectly. You can kind of see the brush marks. So here you can kind of tell the quality of this paper for watercolors. So I think I was trying to do like multiple layers of different colors. First layer maybe blue, and then I wanted to blend in a bit of brown. And you can kind of see a bit of, the brush mark over there is taking some of the colors off instead of adding colors on. So I think it's really challenging to add like a solid layer of paint on this kind of paper. But overall, this sketchbook has so many pages, and it's cheaper than the paper intended for watercolors. Most sketchbooks intended for dry media, they're more affordable compared to the ones with real watercolor paper. And okay, so here's another example of how watercolor works on this paper. So I think the watercolors tend to get a bit of muddy when I try to do multiple layers of blending, and it's kind of hard to add the depths to the painting using this paper. So especially when you see the water over here, the layers, they seem to be blended together, but still it lacks a kind of depth. Or maybe it's because of the paint, the cheap paint I was using. But overall, I think it's kind of hard to give depth to the things and sceneries that I sketch on this paper. But overall, I think this sketchbook is really good for very quick and loose sketches. If you're just looking for really casual sketching, really quick sketching, then yeah, this paper is actually good. It's cheap, and if you make something that you don't like, it's so that you don't feel bad about spending the money on a really pricey sketchbook. And right here, and again, kind of challenging to blend colors together on this paper. And that's it. This one, so some sketchbooks that you can see, it has a back pocket where you can save some receipts, some souvenirs on your walks and travels. It was quite convenient. And it has a bookmark. Okay, and so the next sketchbook that I'm going to show you is a Moleskine drawing book. So the Moleskine that produce so many different kind of notebooks. Some notebooks are so cheap, it cannot take any watercolors at all. It's really frustrating. But for the art series, it has two kinds of sketchbooks. This one is just for dry media, for drawing only. I think it's called Moleskine Art Book. And the other one that I use for watercolor is called Moleskine Watercolor Album. This one is the Moleskine Drawing Book. And I started this in early January 2018. Again, this drawing book of Moleskine is not intended for watercolors, but the paper is really smooth. It's really smooth, and watercolors works out okay, but it's really hard to blend colors together. Ink pen, I was using a Lamy fountain pen with permanent black ink, and it was so easy to draw with pen on here because the paper is so smooth. Yeah, as you can see, I was trying to do some blending over here. I had to add a lot of water after I put the colors on. So in the beginning, after I put orange, I put some light green and then some blue there. But in between these colors, there's actually a pretty solid line there. So I had to mix in a lot of water in these areas so the three colors can blend together smoothly. So for some papers, for some sketchbook papers, you have to do a lot of blending by yourself instead of letting the colors blend together wet on wet naturally itself. Yeah, okay, so you have to learn about the quality of different kind of papers yourself, experimenting. And as you can see, the colors are pretty vibrant. So this paper can take paint really well. The color shows up really vibrant. And I think I was using Sakura Koi watercolors when I was using this sketchbook. Okay, again, this one has many pages. Took me about 4 months to fill, I think. And the ink line shows up really solid and strong on this paper. Okay. I think the Moleskine drawing book has a bigger size. This one is the smaller size. This is the a little bit bigger than the hand. They have an A4 size too. This one is small. It's really easy to carry. It's light. So actually, watercolor works out not so bad on here. It can at least it's better than the previous sketchbook that I show you. There's a little bit interesting blooming happening here. So let me kind of zoom in a bit. It's actually quite smooth. There's a tiny bit of blooming of watercolors happening over here. This actually works out quite well. And the paper, it stays quite flat. So we're trying to do a sky painting right here. As you can see, I kind of struggle with the blending of colors. And when I overblend, when I really, really want the colors to blend together nicely, the paper is kind of rose up a bit. Over here, as you can see some tiny particles of paper right here rose up. So if you try to blend too much with your brush, the paper is gonna roll up and create those kind of textures, which might be distracting. And for here, for some sky effects, it works out okay. And as you can see over here, it was quite challenging to blend different colors together. This one's not quite smooth, and the paper is rolling up, making a lot of like gray particles of paper right there. And so the next sketchbook that I'm going to show you is a Stillman&Birn Alpha sketchbook. So many of you may already know the Stillman&Birn, they produce a series of sketchbooks from alpha to beta, gamma, and there's other kind of series with different types of paper. So the alpha series of Stillman&Birn, they have just regular cartridge paper, and it says for mixed media. So that means watercolors can work on it as well. I think they have a light wash of watercolor on their label too for this series. So I started this in late, let me see the year that I started. I started in late 2014. And the paper is thick enough for some light watercolor washes. And the pages stay quite flat. The paper has a bit of tooth, just like a lot of regular cartridge papers have a little bit tooth, and so the ink pen works out well on it. Very smooth for drawing. And the blending of color actually works out alright. Not bad. Quite smooth. And this one, so my style was like even looser back then. So overall, I think this Stillman&Birn Alpha sketchbook is just suitable for watercolor sketching. But if you want to do bit more serious painting, then I would recommend you to maybe try the beta series, and maybe try other brands of sketchbook intended for watercolors. This one is only for mixed media. So I found a lot of I found a lot of sketchbook with mixed media paper. It's challenging for to do some watercolor techniques, especially wet on wet. So we're trying to do like a flat watercolor wash. It's actually quite challenging on this paper. You can see random pieces of color and brush marks still showing instead of spreading out and dissolving like over here. So it's quite challenging to do like perfect flat washes on this paper. And for here, I tried to add some textures with color pencils, and actually works out pretty well because the paper has a bit of tooth. The color pencil it has really great texture on this paper. Some more over here. Alright. And so if you're just starting out with your art journals, and I would just recommend you to start with small sizes like these ones. So these are just a little bit bigger than my hand. Okay, not too big and not too small. I think once I have tried like a pocket size sketchbook about this big, which is about half the size of this one. About this big is too tiny. When I work on a very tiny sketchbook, I don't feel very inspired because for me, my art journaling style is more about playing with the composition. Like a very small page is actually very limiting for me. So I prefer drawing on sketchbooks at least this big. Okay. So it's really depending on your own taste. I know some of my sketcher friends, they really enjoy sketching on tiny sketchbooks like these big pocket size sketchbooks. Some even have like even mini sketchbooks like this big. Yeah, very tiny ones. For me, I couldn't sketch on those tiny pages. I love to elaborate on the pages with multiple subject matters. So it had to be at least these big. So after a couple years working in my art journals, I began to move to larger sizes, like double the sizes of these, like A4 size. For example, the one that I'm currently working on is the A4 size Arteza watercolor sketchbook. Yeah, so as I have more experience and I feel more ambitious working on larger pages. So if you're just beginning, it might take you a very long time to fill up like an A4 size sketchbook. So I really recommend you to start small. So thank you so much for watching my video. If you like my video, please click like and leave me a comment on what you think about these sketchbooks. Have you tried these sketchbooks before and what you think about them? And if you have any questions or concerns about these sketchbook papers or how watercolor and certain media works on there, you can just give me a question right there, down there in the comment section, and I will create more episodes of sketchbook reviews of how they work with pen and watercolors. So stay tuned. I will see you next time very soon.